The pristine white leather chair had never been touched by another soul until tonight. Elena Whitmore stood frozen in the doorway of her penthouse office, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the frame so tightly her knuckles blanched. The motion sensor lights had triggered at 2:47 a.m., sending an alert to her phone that someone was in her private sanctuary. She'd driven 20 minutes through empty Manhattan streets, her heart hammering with equal parts fury and fear, expecting to find an intruder rifling through her files. Instead, she found him, a man curled up in her chair, the forbidden chair, the one positioned exactly 17 inches from her desk, the one no one was permitted to even brush against. Her OCD whispered its familiar poison through her veins. Contaminated. Ruined. Wrong. The compulsions rose like a tidal wave, demanding she call security, have him removed, throw the chair away, sanitize everything he'd touched. Her breathing quickened, the familiar tightness gripping her chest as her mind catalogued every surface he might have contaminated. But something stopped her finger from pressing the security button on her phone. Something about the way his work-worn hand cradled his sleeping daughter's head, protective even in exhaustion. Something about the threadbare jacket draped over the little girl like a blanket, while he shivered in just a thin t-shirt. Elena Whitmore hadn't built a software empire worth $3 billion by being soft. She'd clawed her way up from nothing, letting nothing and no one stand in her way, her obsessive need for control and perfection becoming her greatest asset in the cutthroat world of tech. People called her brilliant, ruthless, impossible to please. They didn't know that she counted her steps in multiples of 4, that she washed her hands until they bled, that the chaos of human unpredictability sent her into spirals of anxiety that could last for days. So she'd eliminated chaos from her life entirely, building a world of glass and steel in perfect order where everything had its place and nothing ever deviated from the plan. Miguel Santos didn't fit into any plan. She recognized him vaguely as one of the night cleaning crew, though she made a point of never learning their names. Learning names meant connection, and connection meant disorder. But now, watching him sleep with his daughter, she couldn't have been more than 6 years old, Elena felt something crack in the carefully constructed walls around her heart. The little girl stirred, coughing wetly, and Miguel's eyes snapped open. The terror that flooded his face when he saw Elena standing there was the kind of fear that came from a man who'd already lost everything and couldn't afford to lose anything more. "Please," he whispered, his accented English breaking on the word. "Please, Ms. Whitmore, I can explain. Don't call security. I'll clean the chair, I'll pay for it if it's ruined, just please don't fire me. My daughter, Sophia, she's sick and we got evicted 3 days ago and I didn't know where else to go where it was warm and I thought just for a few hours, just until my shift ended, I swear we'll leave right now." "Stop." Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended, silencing his desperate ramble. Her mind was at war with itself. Every instinct screamed to remove them, restore order, protect her carefully controlled environment. But she looked at Sophia's flushed, fever-bright face, at Miguel's eyes that held the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from working multiple jobs while trying to keep a child alive, and she heard herself say, "When did she last see a doctor?" Miguel's face crumpled. "I can't afford, the free clinic has a 3-week wait and the would cost thousands we don't have, and I just need to keep working, save enough for a deposit on a new apartment, but the shelters are full and..." His voice broke entirely, and he buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs he was trying desperately to contain so he wouldn't wake his daughter. Elena's carefully ordered world tilted on its axis. She should walk away. She should call security. Instead, she found herself pulling out her phone, her fingers moving before her rational mind could stop them. "Dr. Patel. Yes, I know it's 3 in the morning. I need you to come to my office immediately. Bring everything you'd need to treat a sick child." She ended the call and met Miguel's shocked stare. "My personal physician. He'll be here in 20 minutes. What happened next would later feel like watching someone else live her life. Elena, who couldn't stand disorder, who had fired an assistant for moving her stapler 2 inches to the left, found herself orchestrating chaos. Dr. Patel diagnosed Sophia with pneumonia and an ear infection, writing prescriptions that Elena sent her night assistant to fill at a 24-hour pharmacy. She ordered food from the one restaurant she knew stayed open late, watching in silence as Miguel tried to refuse, pride warring with hunger, before finally accepting when Sophia asked in a small voice if she could please have some soup. As dawn painted the Manhattan skyline pink and gold, Elena sat across from Miguel in her office, this man who had shattered her perfect order and somehow made her grateful for it. He told her his story between bites of food he kept trying to give to Sophia instead of eating himself. How his wife had died 2 years ago from cancer they couldn't afford to treat. How he worked 3 jobs but still couldn't keep up with rent in a city that devoured people like him. How he'd been sleeping in his car until it was repossessed. How he'd been showering at the gym and washing their clothes in public restrooms. How every day was a desperate calculation of which bills to pay and which to let slide. "Why didn't you ask for help?" Elena asked, and immediately realized how absurd the question was. Who would he ask? Who had she ever been but the cold billionaire in the tower, unreachable, untouchable? Miguel gave her a tired smile. "People like me, we're invisible to people like you. And that's okay. We're not supposed to mix." He said it without bitterness, just stating a fact of the universe, and something in Elena's chest twisted painfully. She thought about her chair, her precious, untouchable chair that no one was allowed to sit in. She thought about all the things she'd hoarded and controlled and kept pristine, all while people like Miguel fought to survive in the margins of her perfect world. And she made a decision that terrified her more than any business deal ever had. "I have a proposition," she said, and watched Miguel's face close off, preparing for disappointment. "I own a building in Brooklyn. Residential. I'm going to give you an apartment there. 3 bedrooms, rent-free for 5 years. I'm also creating a position in my company, facilities coordinator. Salary, benefits, normal hours so you can be with your daughter. You'll start Monday." Miguel stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. "I don't understand. Why would you?" "Because I can," Elena interrupted. "Because I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes and you have a sick daughter sleeping in an office chair. Because," her voice cracked, surprising herself. "Because I've spent my whole life keeping everything perfect and controlled and separate, and it's made me into someone who almost called security on a father trying to keep his child warm. I don't want to be that person anymore." The tears that slid down Miguel's face were silent, reverent. "I'll pay you back," he whispered. "Somehow, I'll pay it forward," Elena said firmly. "When you're stable, when Sophia's grown, help someone else who needs it. That's the only payment I want." 6 months later, Elena stood in the community center she'd funded in Miguel's neighborhood, watching Sophia play with other children, her laughter bright and healthy. Miguel worked beside her now, not just as an employee but as a friend, a concept that had once terrified her, this letting someone into her ordered world. Her OCD hadn't disappeared, she still counted steps and washed her hands too many times and needed things arranged just so. But she'd learned that sometimes the most beautiful things came from embracing the chaos, from letting people leave their mark on your carefully controlled world. The white leather chair sat in her office still, and now when she looked at it, she didn't see contamination. She saw the night her life split into before and after, the night she learned that true freedom didn't come from control but from letting go, from allowing yourself to be touched and changed by another person's humanity. She'd spent billions building an empire. But the best investment she'd ever made cost nothing but compassion, and it had returned dividends beyond measure, in the form of a friendship that had taught her what it meant to finally, truly live.